talking today about two of our favorite subjects, Dave Aranda, head coach of the Baylor Bears, and name, image, and likeness, something that Baylor has struggled with. And I don't think it's any coincidence that since the rise of the NIL and the real rise of the transfer portal after the 2021 season, which Baylor had its most successful season ever, it's been pretty downhill ever since. 6-7 with 4 straight losses to end 2022, and then a very real chance after this weekend to say the Baylor Bears finish the season 3-9. So where has it gone wrong? And it seems so easy, and this is what I was doing at first, because honestly, I don't have a great grip of NIL and what schools can do with it. So that's why I haven't been slamming Baylor on it or naming names or anything like that. I don't have a terrific grip on it, but I think I'm knowing enough now to know that Baylor shouldn't be this far behind. Because when you first heard about NIL, and it was natural, these were the first teams that really benefited from it. The big state schools, the big football programs, even ones that haven't been successful in a long time. Nebraska is one of the most successful NIL programs, Nebraska football, in the entire country, because they can do these huge collectives. They have a humongous alumni base. It's the only show in town in a case like Nebraska, but we also see the big impact it has at Texas and A&M and Florida and Michigan, of course, right? That's natural. But the more we get into this NIL sphere, the more I think Baylor doesn't have an excuse to be this far behind. They're never going to be what UT and what A&M and Alabama and Nebraska and USC are, or Notre Dame is in the NIL world. But this shouldn't be just the easy, low-hanging fruit of why can't Baylor compete with the big boys the way they haven't the last 2 years. That's a little too easy an excuse for me, and I don't think it really works because we do see it at some other schools that are comparable to Baylor because they put together collectives. The one that springs to mind right away is the darling of this year's college football season, James Madison, who's being railroaded out of a bowl game. They finally lost. They're 9-1 in their second year of Division I. That's a school that's pretty comparable to Baylor. And they have been able to put collectives up. Now, when they made the switch to FBS football, they had to cut some sports, but that has worked out tremendously for them. And then I think of places like Ole Miss and Oregon State, which on the dome, you're like, well, Cameron, those are state schools, and they're much bigger than Baylor because they're state schools, but they're not. Oregon State and Ole Miss are roughly the same size. In fact, in terms of overall student, Baylor has more students than Ole Miss. And those are two teams that before this weekend were in the top 15 in football this year. And Ole Miss, obviously, the one that stands out because that's the team that Baylor played in the Sugar Bowl 2 years ago. So why is Baylor falling too far behind? Well, Dave Aranda said, didn't give an excuse as to why they've fallen behind, but says that's on me. That's on me. And so when he was asked in his press conference, as I'm recording this today, it was Monday's press conference, what needs to change? How often do you and Mac Rhodes talk about this NIL sphere and what needs to change going forward? What does that mean for your program? He gave this about 2-minute answer.
You mentioned the NIL thing. How often do you and Mac talk about that and how to build that up?
A lot, yeah. I think the main, probably one of the main problems with all that has probably been me. I think one of the things that's always been a struggle is, and I think for here, it's the way to balance it is the labeling and the judgment that comes when you're in a transactional thing. When if you're labeled this, I treat you like that. If you're labeled this, I treat you a different way. So much of college football is that, and I've tried very hard not to be that, and have really very much wanted to be that way and to win. And this year's been a struggle to do that. And so when you get into the NIL space and you need to, more so than what we've been. And then you open the door to that, of just whether it's staff or just anyone in general, saying, hey, this is a so-and-so percentage guy or allocation guy. This is another allocation guy, or this is that amount, this is that amount. And I think in all of that, you don't want to treat them that way. You want to be able to treat them at a much higher level than any form of payment or money or anything like that. And I just don't think that happens, to be honest. I think it's all accepted that this is a business and you go. And so to be in it but not be of it is going to be the challenge. And for me personally, I look at that as just growth and for the staff and all of it. And so I think, we talk about it quite a bit. And so I'm excited about kind of what we're pushing towards. I think it's very important. Now, the what we're doing is important, but how we do it is probably more important.
So he's being honest there, which we love. We always love Dave's honesty, and it's been honesty to a fault. Two things about this one. First thing, it's been something that's been clamored about by the fans for 2 years now, and that's not a reason why you fire a coach or anything like that, but when you know your job is hanging by a thread and that the only thing that might be saving you is the price of your buyout, I might just stay away from talking about NIL. And this was actually the second NIL question he got. So he kind of offered this up during the press conference. This was a follow-up question by Bryce Cherry. We're going to play the first answer that kind of goes into two separate categories in the next segment. But why even talk about it? Don't talk about it. Don't incriminate yourself. This is like if a guy's girlfriend is found murdered and he says, oh yeah, so I don't have an alibi. And, we've been fighting a lot lately. We have financial issues, got a life insurance policy on her. Just don't offer it up. Don't say anything. Even in the goodness of your heart, Dave, being honest, a lot of that's on me. Don't say that. Let's just stay away from that. It's something we're working on. And Mac Rhodes has been the one talking about it all season. And he's been talking about how well it's gone and things that you might not see on the field yet or might not see until next year and this, that, and the other. And there's something to be said about that. The second point that I got out of this answer is, what the hell is he talking about? What is he talking about? I know what these words mean individually, but what was that answer? Does anyone, please, if you know what he's talking about, please get in the comment section and tell me. I've got nothing. And I've heard Dave Aranda more than most people on the face of the earth. And I can't decipher this one. I think there's a part in there where he's talking about, he doesn't want to pay some players more than others. And that's the blanket argument against NIL and paying athletes in general in college. But that's the name of the game. And I can guarantee you Michael Penix is being paid a lot more than probably all of his teammates at Washington. And, how much is Brock Bowers getting paid versus the rest of his teammates at Georgia? Or, I'm sure there are pay scales at Alabama and at the University of Texas and Ohio State, and Blake Corum is making a lot more money than everyone else is at Michigan. What are the common threads with those teams? It doesn't stop them. They're some of the best teams in the country. It can work. It can work. And so I think it's kind of a hollow excuse for someone like Dabo Swinney at Clemson. And now what it looks like we're set up for here at Baylor as the NIL sphere goes into its, third season next year, and will likely have Dave Aranda still as the head coach. I don't like building in those excuses. But other than that part of the answer, I have no freaking clue what he's talking about. I wish I did, but I don't know. And there's another thing he said about what they need to work on in the offseason and how that could really derail this team going forward. We're going to talk about that in just a second here.